There's a moment in every person's life when they realize the world isn't fair. For some, it's a small disappointment, a broken promise, a stolen opportunity. But for 17-year-old Maya Chen, that moment came on a cold November evening in 1988 when four boys decided her life was worth less than their entertainment. This is the story of 44 days that should never have happened. 44 days that exposed every crack in a system designed to protect the innocent. 44 days that ended in concrete and silence. Maya's name should have been written in yearbooks and college acceptance letters. Instead, it was carved into a headstone far too soon, while the boys who put her there walked free into futures she would never see. This isn't just a story about what happened to one girl in Oklahoma. It's a story about what we allow to happen when we look away. Maya Chen was 17 in the autumn of 1988. She lived in a quiet neighborhood on the east side of Tulsa, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors and kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on. She was a junior at Edison High School, a good student who kept her head down and stayed out of trouble. Her parents had emigrated from Taiwan when she was 3, building a small restaurant from nothing, working 16-hour days so their daughter could have opportunities they never had. Maya helped out after school most days, clearing tables and doing homework in the back corner booth. She talked about becoming a nurse. She had kind eyes and a quiet laugh. She was ordinary in the most beautiful way. Just a girl trying to make it through high school like everyone else. The four boys who would destroy her were also ordinary. That's the part that haunts you. They weren't monsters from some dark fairy tale. They were teenagers, classmates, the kind of boys you'd pass in the hallway without a second thought. There was Derek Paulson, 18, the unofficial leader with a reputation for starting fights he usually won. His best friend was Jake Morrison, also 18, a follower who rarely had thoughts of his own. Then came the younger two, 16-year-old Chris Sullivan, small for his age, but mean in the way small dogs are mean, all bark until someone bigger backed him up. And finally, 17-year-old Tyler Wade, the quiet one who people would later say seemed so normal, as if normal people don't commit atrocities every single day. They noticed Maya the way predators notice prey. She walked home alone most evenings after closing the restaurant with her parents, 2 miles through neighborhoods that got darker and emptier the closer she got to home. She never thought anything of it. This was her neighborhood. These were her streets. She'd walked them 1,000 times. November 19th started like any other day. School, classes she barely remember, lunch with the 2 friends she'd managed to make despite her shyness. Then the restaurant, where she wiped down tables and refilled soy sauce bottles while her mother cooked and her father handled the register. They closed at 9. Her parents wanted to drive her home, but she insisted on walking. The weather was nice. She needed the air. She'd be fine. It was only 2 miles. She made it 8 blocks. Derek's car pulled up beside her at the corner of 15th and Madison, a beat-up Chevy with primer spots and a muffler that sounded like gunfire. She kept walking. The car kept pace. Then it stopped and Derek got out, smiling, that easy smile that boys like him use as camouflage. He asked if she needed a ride. She said no, thank you. He asked again. She said no again, firmer this time. That's when Jake got out of the passenger side. Then Chris. Then Tyler. 4 boys surrounding one girl under a streetlight that flickered like it was trying to warn her. She tried to run. She didn't make it 3 steps before Derek grabbed her arm. She screamed, but the street was empty. The houses had their curtains drawn. The world went on watching television and eating dinner while Maya Chen was dragged into the back seat of a car that would carry her away from everything she knew. They took her to a house on the north side of town, an abandoned rental property that Derek's uncle owned and forgot about. No neighbors close enough to hear anything, no reason for anyone to check on it. The windows were boarded up from the inside. The electricity still worked. There was a mattress in one of the bedrooms, stained and torn. The kind of thing people leave behind when they move, because it's too disgusting to take. This would be Maya's home for the next 44 days. This rotting house with its peeling wallpaper and smell of mildew and something worse underneath. This would be the last place she ever saw. They locked her in the bedroom that first night. She cried until she couldn't anymore. She screamed until her voice gave out. She threw herself against the door until her shoulder bruised black and purple. Nobody came, nobody heard, and the 4 boys sat in the living room playing video games and laughing about what they'd done, already planning what they'd do tomorrow. The first week was about breaking her spirit. That's what Derek said out loud, like he was training a dog. They wanted her afraid. They wanted her compliant. They wanted her to understand that resistance would only make things worse. So they made things worse anyway. They barely fed her. A piece of bread in the morning, if she was lucky. Water from the bathroom tap that tasted like rust, and probably worse. She lost weight so fast her clothes started hanging off her frame. Her face hollowed out. Her eyes sank into dark circles that made her look decades older than 17. The boys found this funny. They made jokes about her appearance, called her names that don't need repeating, laughed when she cried. When she begged them to let her go, they'd mock her accent, the slight lilt her parents' voices had left in hers. They made her shame into their entertainment. The beating started on day 3. Maya had tried to escape through the bedroom window, working at the boards for hours while the boys were out. She almost got one loose. Almost. But Derek came back early and caught her. The rage in his eyes was instant and absolute. He didn't just hit her. He made it systematic, methodical. He used his fists and his boots and anything else in reach. The other boys watched. At first, some of them looked uncomfortable. Tyler even turned away once. But discomfort fades when nobody stops what's happening. Discomfort becomes acceptance, becomes participation. By the end of the first week, all 4 of them had hit her. All 4 had crossed that line, from bystander to abuser. All 4 had decided that Maya Chen's suffering was acceptable. Her parents reported her missing the night she disappeared. The police took a statement, filed a report, put her picture on a bulletin board with dozens of other missing persons. Runaways mostly, they assumed. Troubled kids who'd turn up in a few days embarrassed and apologetic. Maya's parents insisted she wasn't a runaway. She was a good girl. She had no reason to run. Something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong, but there were no witnesses, no suspects, no leads. The investigation stalled before it really began. Her face appeared on local news for 2 nights, then disappeared, replaced by weather reports and sports scores. The world moved on. Her parents didn't. They drove the streets every night looking for her, put up flyers on every telephone pole, begged anyone who'd listen to help them find their daughter. But Maya was locked in a room 2 miles from her own bed, and nobody knew. By the second week, Maya had stopped fighting back. The cost was too high. Every act of defiance brought worse punishment. Every word of protest brought more violence. So she went quiet. She retreated somewhere deep inside herself where the pain couldn't quite reach. The boys noticed the change. It bored them. They wanted reactions. They wanted her scared and crying and begging. So they found new ways to hurt her. They burned her with cigarettes, held lighters to her skin until it blistered and smelled like cooking meat. They made her stand for hours without moving, hitting her whenever she swayed from exhaustion. They played games with her suffering, betting on how long she could endure different tortures, making competitions out of cruelty. And through it all, Maya endured because she had no choice. Because the alternative to enduring was dying, and some part of her still hoped for rescue, still believed someone would find her, still thought maybe tomorrow would be the day someone cared enough to look harder. The house itself became a character in Maya's nightmare. Every creak of the floorboards meant someone was coming. Every slam of a door meant new terror. The smell of the place seeped into her skin. Mildew and rotting wood and unwashed bodies and fear. Her own fear had a smell by then, sour and sharp. The bedroom where they kept her was maybe 10 feet by 12, walls the color of old mustard. One window boarded up so tight, not even light got through. The mattress she slept on was covered in stains she tried not to think about. There was a bucket in the corner for when they didn't feel like letting her use the bathroom. The indignity of it was intentional. Everything was intentional. Every humiliation designed to remind her she was nothing, that she had no power, that she existed only because they allowed it. And in the living room, the boys lived their regular lives. They watched television. They ate pizza and hamburgers. They called their parents and said they were staying at each other's houses. They went to school some days, maintained the appearance of normal teenage life, while Maya starved and bled and prayed in a locked room 20 feet away. 3 weeks in, and Maya tried to escape again. She'd been working on the doorframe during the long hours alone, using a nail she'd found to slowly work at the wood around the lock. It took days. Her fingers bled from the effort, but she got the lock mechanism loose enough that when she threw her weight against the door, it actually opened. For the first time in 21 days, she stood in that hallway as a free person. For exactly 12 seconds. Then Chris came out of the bathroom and saw her. The beating that followed was the worst yet. They all participated, took turns, made sure she understood that this was what happened when she tried to leave. When it was over, she couldn't stand, could barely see through eyes swollen shut, could taste blood and feel broken teeth loose in her mouth. And Derek leaned down close to her face and whispered that next time she tried to run, he'd kill her. Not quickly, slowly, in ways that would make everything so far seem gentle. She believed him. She stopped trying to escape. By week 4, Maya's body was failing, not just from the beatings, though those continued daily, from starvation, from dehydration, from infections and wounds that never got cleaned, from the simple fact that human beings aren't designed to survive what she was surviving. Her hair fell out in clumps. Her gums bled. Bruises covered so much of her body that her natural skin tone was just a memory. She developed sores that wouldn't heal. Her breathing became labored, shallow. She coughed blood sometimes. The boys noticed, but didn't care. If anything, Maya's deterioration made things easier for them. She couldn't fight back anymore, could barely speak. She'd become what they wanted from the beginning, completely powerless, completely theirs. They invited friends over sometimes. That's the part that should have ended everything but didn't. Other teenagers came to that house, saw Maya locked in that room, saw her condition, saw the bruises and the blood and the obvious signs of torture, and they said nothing, did nothing. One kid, a friend of Jake's, named Marcus, actually asked what was going on. Derek told him they were just messing around, just having fun. Marcus looked at Maya, looked at Derek, and shrugged. Okay, man, whatever. Then went back to playing video games in the living room while Maya lay dying 20 feet away. That's how complicit silence works. That's how atrocities continue, because people who could stop them decide it's not their problem, decide they don't want to get involved, decide that someone else's suffering is less important than their own comfort. Maya's parents never stopped searching. Her mother quit her job at the restaurant to spend every waking hour looking. She walked the streets calling Maya's name until her voice gave out. She visited the police station so often they started avoiding her. Her father kept the restaurant running alone, working 18-hour days, saving money for a reward. $5,000 for information, then $10,000, then $20,000. They did television interviews, radio spots, talked to anyone who'd listen. The community organized search parties. Volunteers combed parks and abandoned buildings. They found nothing. How could they? Maya was hidden in plain sight. In a house in a neighborhood people drove through every day, behind a door that would have opened if anyone had bothered to try the handle. But nobody tried. Nobody thought to look there. And Maya's hope died a little more each day as she realized no one was coming. The torture escalated in the 5th week. The boys were getting bored again. Routine cruelty wasn't exciting anymore. They needed something new, something worse. They brought in objects, tools, things designed to cause maximum pain. They experimented on Maya like she was a lab animal, and they were curious children with no sense of consequences. She screamed when she still had the strength to scream. Then she just whimpered. Then she went silent. The silence scared them more than the screaming. Silent victims make you confront what you're doing, make you see the humanity you're destroying. So they tried to make her scream again, tried harder, did worse, but Maya had retreated so far inside herself that pain was just sensation. Reality was just something happening to someone else. Her mind had learned to disconnect. To survive, she had to stop being Maya, had to become something else, something that couldn't feel or think or hope. On day 32, Maya tried to kill herself. She'd saved 3 sleeping pills the boys had given her when her crying kept them awake. She took all 3 at once. It wasn't enough. She woke up 12 hours later, disappointed to still be alive. The boys found this hilarious. They mocked her for failing at dying, called her worthless at everything, including suicide, made jokes about it for days afterward. But secretly, it scared them, because if Maya died in that house, they'd have a body to deal with. They'd have evidence. They'd have to answer questions they hadn't thought through. So they talked about letting her go, actually discussed it one night while drinking beers and acting like this was just a normal problem to solve. But letting her go meant she could talk, could identify them, could send them to prison. So they decided to keep her just a little longer, just until they figured out what to do, just until the situation resolved itself somehow. They didn't say what that resolution would look like, but they all knew. Week 6, and Maya wasn't talking anymore, wasn't moving much. Her body had given up fighting. She lay on that stained mattress, staring at nothing. When the boys came in to hurt her, she barely reacted. The spark that makes a person had been beaten out of her. Sometimes she whispered things, fragments of prayers, her mother's name, apologies for things she hadn't done. The boys stopped finding her interesting. She wasn't fun anymore, wasn't entertaining. She was just a problem, a liability, something that needed to be dealt with. Derek started talking about ending it, about finishing what they'd started. The others agreed with the casual indifference of boys deciding what movie to watch. Yeah, man, probably time. Can't keep doing this forever? As if what they were doing was an inconvenience rather than murder in slow motion. As if Maya was something rather than someone. Day 44. Maya Chen woke up knowing something was different. Maybe it was the way Derek looked at her that morning. Maybe it was the hushed conversation she heard through the walls. Maybe it was just the feeling you get when you've lived in terror so long you develop a sixth sense for when it's about to get worse. She was right. The boys had made their decision. Today would be Maya's last day alive. They'd decided this over breakfast, over cereal and orange juice, over normal things that normal boys do on normal mornings. Except they weren't normal. They were killers. They just hadn't completed the killing yet. They spent the day preparing, not for murder, just preparing the way you'd prepare for any unpleasant task. They gathered supplies, discussed methods, argued about the best way to do it that would leave the least evidence. Jake suggested making it look like an accident. Chris said they should just strangle her and get it over with. Tyler said nothing but didn't object to anything either. Silence as agreement, silence as complicity. Derek made the final call. They'd beat her to death, same way they'd been beating her for 43 days, just harder this time, just until she stopped moving. Simple, quick, or so they thought. Maya knew what was coming when all four of them entered her room that evening. She saw it in their eyes, the decision already made, the future already written. For the first time in weeks, she felt something besides numbness. Not fear exactly, more like relief, because at least it would be over. At least the pain would stop. At least she wouldn't have to wake up tomorrow in this room with these boys and this endless suffering. She didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't ask them to reconsider. She just looked at them with eyes that had seen too much and waited for it to end. That look should have stopped them, should have made them see what they were doing, should have reminded them that this was a person, a girl who had parents and dreams and a future they were stealing. But it didn't. They'd gone too far to turn back now. The beating lasted hours. They took turns, rested when they got tired, used fists and feet and anything in reach. Maya stopped moving after the first hour, but they didn't stop. They kept going because Derek said they had to be sure, had to make certain, had to finish what they'd started. By the time they were done, Maya Chen wasn't recognizable as human. Her face was gone. Her skull was broken. Her body was a collection of wounds and fractures and destroyed tissue, and the four boys stood over her, breathing hard and looking at what they'd done. The enormity of it finally hitting them. They'd killed someone, actually killed her, taken a life, ended everything Maya was and everything she could have been. For what? For entertainment? For power? For no reason at all? The panic set in fast. They had a dead body in a bedroom, evidence everywhere, blood on the walls and floor and themselves. They needed to hide her, needed to make sure nobody found her. Derek remembered the oil drum in the garage, big metal barrel his uncle used for burning trash, perfect size for a body if you folded it right. They wrapped Maya in old sheets, carried her to the garage, the hardness of logistics overriding the horror of what they were doing. They put her in the drum. She didn't fit easily. They had to break more bones, had to fold her in ways bodies don't fold. The sound of it echoed in that garage, wet cracks and pops. The boys didn't look at each other, didn't speak, just worked like they were assembling furniture, like this was a job that needed doing. Jake knew where to get concrete. His dad worked construction and had bags of it in their shed. He took 6 bags in the middle of the night, mixed them in buckets with water from the house. They poured the concrete over Maya's body, filled the drum until she was completely covered, completely hidden, completely erased. It took all night. By morning, the concrete was starting to set. The drum was too heavy to move by hand. They used a dolly to roll it to Derek's truck, drove it out to the industrial area by the river where nobody went anymore, dumped it behind a warehouse that had been closed for years, covered it with trash and debris, walked away. got breakfast at a diner like nothing had happened, eggs and bacon and coffee, talking about school and girls and what movie to see that weekend. Maya Chen's body wasn't even cold yet, and her killers were already moving on with their lives. 6 weeks later, a worker clearing debris behind the old Riverside warehouse noticed the drum, thought it was strange, called his supervisor. The supervisor called the police. The police opened it and found what was left of Maya Chen. The concrete had preserved her in the worst way, frozen her final position, the terror still visible in what remained of her face. The coroner said she'd been beaten to death, said she'd suffered injuries consistent with prolonged torture, said whoever did this had taken their time, had enjoyed it. The investigation moved fast once they had a body, too fast for the boys who thought they'd gotten away with it. Derek had been bragging, told a friend at school that he'd done something crazy. The friend didn't believe him until Derek showed him pictures, Polaroids the boys had taken during those 44 days, trophies of Maya's suffering. The friend went to the police. The police got a warrant, found more evidence at the house, blood that matched Maya's DNA, her belongings hidden in Derek's closet. A journal one of the boys had kept describing what they'd done in detail, like it was something to remember, something to be proud of. They arrested all four within 24 hours. By the end of the week, they'd all confessed, tried to blame each other, tried to minimize their role, but the evidence was overwhelming, the confessions detailed, the crime undeniable. The trial was national news, Maya's face on every television, her story in every newspaper. People were outraged, horrified, demanding justice. The prosecution called it one of the most brutal crimes in state history, asked for the maximum sentence, life without parole for all four defendants. The defense argued they were just kids, teenagers who made terrible mistakes, boys who could be rehabilitated, who deserved a second chance. The jury didn't agree, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Maya's parents collapsed in their seats. Finally, someone had acknowledged what had been done to their daughter. Finally, someone had said it mattered, but the relief was temporary. Sentencing came 2 months later. The judge looked at the four boys and delivered their punishment. Derek Paulson, the leader, got 8 years. Jake Morrison got 7. Chris Sullivan got 6. Tyler Wade, the youngest, got 5. Not even a year for every day they'd tortured Maya. Not even close to life sentences. Not even close to justice. The courtroom exploded again. Maya's parents screamed. Her mother had to be carried out. Her father just sat there staring at the judge like he couldn't believe what he'd heard. The defense called it a victory, said the judge had shown mercy, had recognized these were young men with futures ahead of them, young men who deserved a chance to change. Maya didn't get a chance to change, didn't get a future, didn't get mercy, but her killers did. They served their time in juvenile facilities, not real prisons, places with education programs and counseling and vocational training, places designed to rehabilitate. Derek got out in 6 years for good behavior, Jake in 5, Chris in 4, Tyler in 3, all of them released before their 25th birthdays, all of them given clean records, all of them allowed to move on, to get jobs, to have relationships, to build lives. Maya Chen stayed 17 forever, stayed buried, stayed gone. Her parents visit her grave every week, put flowers on a headstone that shouldn't exist, talk to a daughter who can't answer. The restaurant closed years ago. They couldn't stand to be in the place where Maya had spent her last normal evening. Couldn't walk past the booth where she'd done homework and dreamed about nursing school and being normal. The 4 boys are out there now, living under different names, in different cities. Some of them have families, jobs, normal lives. They don't talk about what they did, don't acknowledge it, don't think about the 44 days that defined and destroyed Maya Chen. Or maybe they do. Maybe they lie awake sometimes and see her face. Maybe they remember the sounds she made, the way she looked at them on day 44 with eyes that had given up. Maybe it haunts them, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe they've convinced themselves it wasn't that bad, that they were just kids, that everyone deserves a second chance. Maya never got a second chance, never got to turn 18, never got to become a nurse or fall in love or travel or do any of the 1,000 things that make up a life. She got 44 days of hell and then nothing. And the boys who gave her that walked free. This is what injustice looks like. Not abstract, not theoretical, real and specific and named. Maya Chen deserved better, deserved protection, deserved rescue, deserved justice. She got none of it. Her story is one of the darkest crimes in history, not just because of what happened to her, but because of what didn't happen after. The system failed her in life and in death. The laws designed to protect people like her revealed themselves as inadequate. The sentences given to her killers revealed how little her life was valued. And now, decades later, Maya is still 17 in that grave, while the boys who put her there are middle-aged men living free. If that doesn't make you angry, you haven't been paying attention. If you found Maya's story as devastating as it is, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we're bringing you another story that demands to be heard, another person whose name deserves to be remembered, another case where justice fell short, but truth refuses to stay silent.